All right, welcome in to the Sports on Tap Seattle podcast, and we're going to get straight to the point today, George. Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, and Will Dissly have all been released by the Seahawks. You're listening to the Sports on Tap Seattle podcast. I'm Sammy, and with me, as always, is my older brother, George.
Your favorite place to be a fan of Seattle sports. Now let's get this party started.
Tito, are you ready? Are you ready? You ready?
And the number is going to be something that as we go through this show that I'm figuring out, like we know how much money it saves. We're not really sure what the cap is yet because some people reported it was a post-June cut, which would change the cap number, and or a pre-June cut now is what Brady Henderson of ESPN's reporting. So who knows what the thing is. But in total, that's three names that have been on the Seahawks for quite some time now, all released same day. This is obviously a new era of Seahawks football, and they're going to be bringing their own people, and they're changing things up.
Yeah, a couple guys who are fan favorites and a guy who is probably the least favorite Seahawk of fans in a very long time. So it's kind of like bittersweet at the same moment. Yesterday we had the Russell Wilson trade go. Russell Wilson gets cut from the Broncos, which might be the best trade in Seahawks history for what we got and his performance post-trade. And then today we cut Jamal Adams, who might be the worst trade in Seattle Seahawks history for what we gave up and what is the impact he made for the Seattle Seahawks. So pretty interesting in two different worlds.
Yeah, it's there's a lot going on, and I mean, at the end of the day, it is interesting considering, we're talking about a guy like you said too. That was one of the bigger trades in Seahawks in a long time. But he ended up being one of the most exciting players for fans to be excited to root for, turn into a lot of different things, right? Whether it's media hate, whether it's just unfortunate events of injuries, those are things he can't control. It's that one, think of Jamal Adams. He went from this superb talent, trading so much for him. Then the injury concern stuff, it's that stuff nobody hates him for. That's injuries, right?
But then I think it's more the media and the reporter's wife last season. Just a couple of things
it's all
fans
happened
can't
recently.
relate to. Yeah,
it's all happened recently. It's not like he was a player that was doing this for a couple of years. He's always been a cockier player, which is fine. That happens. You have cocky players in the NFL. But there was kind of this last couple months of not being great, and a lot of media people obviously not liking him. It's very mixed feelings. But then it's weird because on the other side, you have Quandre Diggs, who's kind of been the man of the people for the Seahawks the last couple of years. And you have the Will Dissly side, which is,
Washington
went to
Huskies.
University of Washington. Yeah, and you got to remember, this puts the Seahawks in an interesting position. 2 out of our 3 safeties, and I know we have Jarek Reed back there from the 7th round last year, but we're talking about 2 out of our 3 starting safeties have been released, right? Julian Love's still here. And then you have on the tight end side, Noah Fant's a free agent, Parkinson's a free agent, and Will Dissly is now cut. So the Seahawks do not have a tight end. They have Brady Russell is their only – I don't even know who that is. Do you? He's the only tight end on the roster left. Outside of Tyler Mabry. I know Tyler Mabry. But I know they're not going into the season with that. So we're talking about a situation that we don't have our tight end right now. We don't have our full safety position filled out. It's almost feeling like – unless there's some really big moves coming up, right, or some free agency stuff, there is a little bit of a rebuild looking or a retweak at least.
Yeah, I think it's just pretty simple. The head coach came in and he wants to kind of put his stamp on the team, doesn't find I was a little surprised by the Diggs being waived, even though his production has gone down the last year or so. But I think just because he's good locker room guy, fan favorite, that's kind of what surprised me. And kind of leaving us with only Julian Love at the safety position kind of surprises me too. But I guess, at this point in time, I'm totally fine with any moves we're making because I think the only way to be successful with a new head coach in a new era is by letting him kind of come in and do what he thinks is best for the team. And whether that means we lose a couple guys that we might be attached to as fans, I think we'd be more attached to, building a project and building a team that hopefully the head coach actually likes, Yeah. So, it's bittersweet. I think Jamal, we all kind of knew the writing was on the wall. He was coming. And Diggs and Disley are definitely a little bit of a surprise. And I don't know what you said. Like, I think it's like $28 million in cap spaces is going to probably free up. I mean, that's the preliminary, like,
it's going to
word
be less
on the
now.
street. It's going to be less.
Okay.
But
Well, no. It's going to be 11 million is what they're expecting for Diggs. Okay. 6.9 million of cap will be freed up for Will Disley. Originally, people believed it was Jamal Adams was going to be a post June 1st release, which would free up 16.5 on June 2nd. But instead, Corbin Smith is reporting now, Adams is not a post June designation. So his dead cap isn't going to spread over 2 years. They're absorbing it all this year. But cutting him outright will open up $6 million in cap this year. But they will not take any dead money next year, and they get that money immediately, right? So it's not like they have to wait till June 1st. So they're getting $6 million plus
so it
11,
gives you some
so
like
17
immediate
plus
flexibility.
7. So we're getting, I think we're opening up 24 immediely
All
with
right.
this.
So which is pretty good.
Yeah, but hold on. I just want to make sure that everyone understands this, because it was going to be 17.5 plus 7, which is what, 24?
Yeah.
Now we're talking about 6. Oh, no, 11. Sorry, I was way off. It was going to be 27 plus 6, so 34 million. So 11, 16, and 7. Now it's going to be 11, 7, and 6. So, but still, it frees up instead of 17 now with another 16 after June. It's freeing up that whole 24 we said, right?
Yeah.
24 right now, like immediately.
Yeah, so I guess it gives you immediate flexibility is what I was, saying. And by the way, someone might comment on this later on and be like, Sammy, you got your cap numbers wrong. We are not capologists, so I'm going to make sure that, just save the capology comments for later in case we got it wrong.
Well, I said that from the beginning. I mean,
I know.
I'm not there's ESPN people getting it wrong already and saying, never mind,
exactly.
It's a different situation right now. These are all estimates and assumptions, because people are talking about, half the reports where Jamal Adams was cut is going to be cut post June 1st and free up 16 million. Now the second half of people are saying the Seahawks have announced it's actually 6 million only because it's access to funds immediately and it's happening pre June 1st. So, but I think the final verdict really is it's going to be roughly 11 million for Diggs that's freed up, roughly 7 million for Disley, and most likely 6 million-ish for Jamal Adams, because it's most likely, that word, pre-June 1st, like happening right now. So it is a big release for us. The reason I think the Seahawks, are doing this outside of just obvious, right? Like, there's always players in the NFL where sometimes they're just not fitting your cap space. Sometimes we just you move on from players, right? Whatever the obvious thing is. But the Seahawks also were in a really tight spot cap-wise. I think they were at $12 million without their draft picks. So they were going to be at a point where they had, I don't know, after the draft, like $5 million with Jordan Brooks as a free agent and Noah Fant and Leonard Williams and Bobby Wagner. So they were going to be in a really bad position to be able to either re-sign players, get people in free agency, any of that after the draft. Now they're freeing themselves up where they can potentially re-sign somebody, sign somebody if they need to off the free agency market, and do what they have to do at the draft, all with it fitting the boundaries, right? And this is, honestly, George, this is just the reality of the NFL sometimes. Like, even some of these players, like Will Disley, he's 27 years old. He's going to be a great piece on the market. He's going to get a contract somewhere and get a job. So will Diggs. Adams is a weird situation because it depends how much money he's looking for, his medicals and all that. But this is the NFL. You get cut a lot of the times, even if you're still a good player, because teams just have to continually figure out their cap space. It's a yearly cycle every single year.
Yeah, no, totally. And I was just thinking about the cap in general, and man, it's almost tax season. I don't know what's more complicated, the NFL's cap system or the U.S. tax system. So it's going to be a little bit hard.
It is complicated.
Yeah. So, but in anyways, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, like you said, you kind of hit the nail on the hammer with the nail, or whatever they say. We have a lot of cap problems. Now we have a lot less cap problems. We have the draft coming up. This is going to be a very interesting year for the Seahawks. And I think a lot of these guys will probably go and look for a tight end some point in the draft. We'll probably look for a safety somewhere in the draft. and we just go from there. And then we have some free agent money to play with, and you can rebuild a team really quick in football. I mean, we've seen teams go from first to worst and worst to first in the NFL really quickly. So it's not like, I feel like in the NFL, you're never really totally rebuilding, but you're retweaking the system. And I think that's exactly what Mike McDonald and John Schneider are doing right now. They're retweaking, and hopefully they are at a point they can compete next year, and at worst the year after that.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, what you said is what always in the only thing that matters, which is this is just about competing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's about competing in a year to 2 or 3 year span, right? These teams aren't trying to compete just this year and then not compete the next. And they're not just trying to compete in 5 years. There's always that answer of what can we do to compete within the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and right. all in between if possible. So that's what these moves are made for. And, you know, it is – there's also these possibilities, and I think the only person this is probably likely or could be possible for is Quandre Diggs, which is you get released and you get brought back on a smaller deal. That happens. Yeah. I don't see that happening with Disley because he's a young tight end who's been all right and he might get a contract. Jamal Adams, it feels like that relationship's just done, right? Doesn't it feel like that?
I think doesn't feel like that. I mean, I think it's an obvious statement.
Yeah.
I mean,
the Jamal Adams part's done. Diggs is probably
I'm looking for the opportunity. Like he didn't
true.
get an opportunity here in Seattle.
I don't know if that's what it means, but I'm a kind of this is actually an interesting topic because everyone's talking about this now. I hate the Jamal Adams hate. I think it's kind of dumb. Like the guy didn't do anything other than the yikes comment. Like I think it's
a yikes comment. Like it just shows that like the guy's a dick. Like he's plain and simply
that's
a dick.
fair.
Yeah,
but
that's
like
all
I
it
mean,
is.
but like I feel like it's just been so related. Like everyone's put everything he says now on him as like this thing.
Well,
like
I will say one thing though.
It's normal to tweet like I'm looking for an opportunity.
Yeah, but I will say I would say one thing about Jamal Adams. I think that is kind of weird. Like I don't like him. I don't dislike him. I have like really no hard feelings on Jamal Adams either way. But it is interesting to see like Dave Softy Mahler being like my most hated Seahawk ever and want him to be released most. And then Brock Heward, who's usually not that critical of players, saying he can't wait for him to leave because it's his least favorite Seahawk ever. So he might also be like really like an asshole to a lot of his media members too. Like it seems like he might just be a dude that's not very nice. That's probably where the hate stems from. Like I can't tell you because I have no feelings.
Yeah. The people that interact with him, I'm pretty sure I remember something of Joe Fan too, like back in the day where
yep.
he like made some like asshole comment to him like during a like media because Joe asked him a question about his like asked him a question about his play or something, and it's like that's our job, like relax. So I don't know. But the thing is, for me, is I don't have interactions with him.
Me either.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
My point is, I feel like a lot of people are linking too many things together, like his personality and his injuries and his play. And I'm like, okay, like they're all a little separate.
Totally.
No, but of course, that's the price you pay for being a professional athlete who also is vocal and also did go on Twitter to try to like attack people. So like it's kind of the price you pay that sometimes people are going to link all that shit together. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, for me, I wouldn't say he's like my least hated or most hated Seahawk, but I would say he's one of the most disappointing. I mean, Percy Harvin's up there, but we won a Super Bowl and he had a kickoff return in the Super Bowl, right? Like I saw somebody tweet today. It was one of the radio people in Seattle that tweeted right now, like, "Oh, I'm still stuck on the part that Percy Harvin was a worse trade than Jamal Adams." And I was thinking, I don't know. I watched my own eyes Percy Harvin return a kick for a touchdown in the Super Bowl. I feel like that trumps whatever else Jamal Adams did.
That kind of does.
Right? Like, but so
That's
Jamal Adams to me could be one of the worst trades, if not the worst trade we've ever had.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I think the worst trade in Seahawks history.
Yeah, it was a bad one, but it is what it is, right? That's it's a new era now. It's a new regime. It's a new situation. And so I think at the end here, George, is we're looking at somewhere between 33 to 36 million is now what I'm catching on Twitter. So it was correct, like the estimation in cap space. So the Seahawks, essentially, George, it's time to reboot. They're going to find a way to either bring back Jordan Brooks and Bobby Wagner, or they might even bring neither back and try to go get somebody like Patrick Queen from Baltimore.
Right.
And it's time to reboot through the draft. and see what this new era of Seahawks football is, right? I mean, this is,
Absolutely.
it's one of those like times it's like, it's a bittersweet. It's like I feel for guys, especially like Disley and Diggs, So I guess, you know what? I guess I do have some anti-Jamal Adams because, like, I didn't feel bad for Jamal Adams when I said that. I felt bad for Disley. I felt bad for Disley
Exactly.
and Diggs, and I didn't even mention Adams. But it's interesting to see what happens to them here moving forward.
Yeah, like you said, I could see Diggs being back with the team, but probably not Disley. He's probably going to demand too much in the open market, but that's totally fine unless he wants to take a hometown discount, which is always a possibility too. But I don't foresee that.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Especially I do see a lot of reports too, George, that there's going to be a lot more things happening, right? And
Right.
This could include something like restructures for some people, like Tyler Lockett. He's a strong candidate for, and I'm not. This is not an opinion. A lot of the times, people take words as is your opinion, but not what you're actually reading or like what you're actually hearing. What we're hearing online all over is that there is the potential that Tyler Lockett would be one of those players to be released because he has a extremely high. I think he's our second highest cap space outside of Jamal Adams, and this isn't Pete Carroll anymore, right? This isn't the old regime. This is a new regime that might say, like, okay, he's Tyler Lockett. They don't have the same emotion that we do towards Tyler Lockett,
And that's what I want too. I want a organization that doesn't have nostalgia or feelings like for old stuff. I want them to build it the way they think it's going to be built, and then shit, if it's good, it's good. If it doesn't work out, all right, well, it didn't work out.
Yeah. For example, and with that said, like it's like what the Tyler Lockett thing is. If you can find a way to restructure his deal or release him and sign him for cheaper and do it, and that's what's best for the team, cool. I love that.
Yep, exactly.
You get to keep Tyler Lockett. Same goes for Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner, if he's willing to come back like he did this last year for a 1-year, $7 million deal, totally cool. But if he's looking for, I'm trying to be paid like a top linebacker in the NFL, you can't use the emotional feel and overpay him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
So we'll see what happens. I think we're going to be doing a lot of these emergency 15, 20-minute podcasts over the next couple of weeks, George, because a lot of things are happening.
Absolutely. Fluid movement.
Well, I also want to mention to everybody here, we have a lot of podcasts coming up. We have our Mariners on tap. We have 2 of them from last week. We have another 2 this week, and we have Jackson Beavens coming on this podcast on the Seattle on tap page this week as well. So we have a lot of things happening. With that said, go to the link in the bio on YouTube or on the podcast wherever you're listening or watching this, and you'll see where we have our Mariners page, our Huskies page, and this Seattle on tap page is all Seahawks stuff. And there's a couple other, social media pages for the Mariners and whatnot as well. So check those all out. And we're always coming to you. We've been doing a lot more, George. We've been doing 2-3 times a week on the Sports on Tap Seattle podcast platform.
Yeah, exactly. That's great, man. And you guys will be hearing a lot more from us here in the near future.
I love it. All right. Well, Seahawks, big moves done. And the new era has begun. So
absolutely,
get used to it. Things are changing. I do have one last question for you really quickly, George.
Tell me, my man.
Which is, if you had to predict based on like some of the moves right now, I know some people might take these as money moves only. Some people might think this is a rebuild move. As of right now, do you see this as a the double pro where it's like money move and that means we're going to do stuff to get better? Or do you see this as like a money move, but we're in the restructure phase where we might be not as good next year? I just want to know are you on which one?
I mean, both. I don't think Quandre Diggs is that good anymore. Jamal Adams obviously never plays, and Will Disley's an average tight end. So you save a lot of money with those 3 players.
I think you're misinterpreting the question. I'm not talking about this move. So I'm saying based on the fact that we're starting to do these moves, do you think they're building? I asked that wrong because these moves obviously I don't think alter a season completely. But I'm saying more, do you think the movement right now is going to be towards allowing ourselves to have a rebuild year? Or do you think they're trying to make moves right now to figure out a way to compete next year? And by compete, I mean be a playoff team.
I mean, maybe be a playoff team. It's a gap year, right? I mean, you bring back Geno Smith, and he's a good quarterback, but he's not a great quarterback. It's a gap year. That's all it is. It's a gap year.
Yeah. It's just weird that because I get, as much as I love Pete Carroll, it's this is why some people wanted him out earlier, because I think everyone knew you're going to probably fire Pete Carroll and then have a gap year. And we were already
Exactly.
kind of in gap years with Pete Carroll, right? So
Exactly.
this is probably why people wanted it to be more. So it'll be interesting to see. The guest, George, is $36.22 million in cap space, and I guess we'll find out more as the week goes. So for those, follow us on Seattle on Tap on Twitter and on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you follow us, and you'll probably get the final number when it's really final here.
Perfect.
All right. We love you all. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. As always, I'm Sammy on Tap.
I'm George on Tap, and thank you for stopping by.
Peace.